There's no way a bear or anything could have put that stuff together. People were like, well, homeless people probably did it. That's a lot of work for a homeless guy in the middle of the woods. When you eliminate all the rational possibilities, the only thing left is the impossible. Thinking back there, there's no way something without human-like hands with thumbs could have built something like that.
On this episode of the Cryptid Crew podcast, I would like to welcome to the show outdoorsman and former logging enthusiast, Corey Ashby. Corey, thank you for coming on the show. It's awesome to have you.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Corey and I met at Bigfoot Days in Estes Park, Colorado, which I think had a fantastic turnout.
Yeah, that was probably one of the bigger turnouts. I've gone up a couple times, and that was probably one of the biggest turnouts I've seen.
Yeah, that was our first time at Bigfoot Days, and there's a good crowd there. We had a lot of people show up at our tent and share stories, and I think I was pretty much standing up all day long.
Yeah, you and the Bigfoot expedition were easily the busiest area. Like it was hard to get through there just to walk by.
Yeah, that was pretty neat to have the crew or the cast from Expedition Bigfoot next to us. They were very busy.
Yeah, you could tell they were experienced with it though. They were true professionals. They knew what they were doing.
Yes, we left the following day, and Maddie told us that it had snowed, I believe, 17 inches.
Yeah, there was a huge storm that rolled in right after you guys left and just buried the whole town. It was wild.
That's pretty incredible, especially for the first part of May. At least for here it is. We see snow maybe once a year. So
this year's been crazy here. We usually get just destroyed through starting all the way back in October. Like we get snow on Halloween, and this year we've only gotten snowfall maybe 3 or 4 times. At least where I'm at. Up in the mountains, it gets a little bit more, but even usually down in like the Fort Collins area and Severance where I live, we usually get snow pretty much all winter. So we're actually technically in a drought right now.
Yeah, we are as well. We have not had much rain the past 9 months, so it's dry here. Corey, I tell you what, we'll just kind of dive into this. You grew up in Northern California, where the legend of Bigfoot started with the Jerry Crew Bigfoot cast, I guess, in the late 1950s. And of course, the Patterson-Gimlin film, the famous Patty film from 1967. Just tell us what got you interested in Bigfoot, and what age was it?
For me, it was from birth. I'd heard about Bigfoot. Like you said, I grew up there, so it was part of our culture. You know, in schools, we always had pictures. There was always something going on. We had a Bigfoot museum that wasn't too far from where I grew up. So we were always just I imagine it's kind of like what Loch Ness is. You know, you just always hear of Nessies just all the time. So when I was growing up, that's all it was. It was Bigfoot. And so even as a little kid, I was fascinated by it. But I didn't fully believe. I thought it was just one of those weird, like, oh, that's kind of a cool little legend, whatever. But it was my dad and my grandpa who grew up logging before I got into it with them, who would tell me their stories about what they had heard and what they had seen. And I was like, okay, well, you know, if they're telling me it's true, it's got to be true. So that was really my introduction. Was from the first moment, I was pretty much indoctrinated into the Bigfoot ideology.
That particular area in Northern California, the Shasta Trinity National Forest.
Yep. I was born in the middle of Shasta County. I spent 4 years living over in Humboldt, just outside Arcata. So, yeah, I've been all over that area. And then with logging, every back road, me and my dad used to actually cut the logging roads. So we would be one of the first people in those areas.
Yeah, that Northern California is absolutely beautiful. The Redwoods are they are amazing. If that is definitely a bucket list thing.
Yeah, anywhere that you can walk in between 2 trees and it turns pitch black in the middle of summer just because of how huge they are, you really do feel like you walk into like a storybook. Like you hear the cars and everything behind you, and then you walk into that forest and it just sound buffers everything. And it's just silent except for like animals, and it's one of the coolest things. That it's one of my My favorite memories of growing up over there was walking through the redwoods.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful place. It really is amazing how big those trees get. It's just spectacular to see. Corey, during Bigfoot days, you shared a story with me, and you found some interesting structures in Northern California while logging, and at the time you did not know what they were. Can you give us some detail about those?
Yeah, I remember the first time I came upon one. I was pulling what are called chokers, which are giant thick wires behind a D8 cat, a big tractor. That's what you wrap around the logs to drag. So I was down in a valley, and I found this huge ring of like pine needles, which isn't weird, pine needles, whatever. But what was weird is they were at the base of a fir tree, so they didn't come from a tree that they should have came from. It was a huge round circle of pine needles at the base of an evergreen, which just didn't make sense to me. But I was young. I was like, whatever. I got a job to do. I remember telling my dad, and he goes, "Yeah, you'll find those all the time." And I'd be like, "Well, what are they?" And he'd be like, "I have no idea." He always thought maybe bears did it or raccoons did it, and then you would hear rumors like on the yard. That's where all the actual logs would go. The old timers would be like, "Oh yeah, that's Bigfoot. Bigfoot does that. He's messing with you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, whatever." But yeah, I would see those quite frequently. But that was the first time. I was probably 12, 13, way too young to be logging. Don't tell anyone. Uh, but that was the first time I had seen one, and it really tripped me out because even at that age, I knew enough about trees. I grew up in the mountains, and I was like, something's not. This isn't natural. These pine needles and all this stuff, this brush that's here, should not be at the base of this evergreen. And it wasn't until I got older and started watching like podcasts and the shows, they were like, it's a nest. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, that would explain it.
Did the nest, I guess we'll call them nest, did they look like they were put together with something that had hands or had a thumb?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, they were like weaved. The outer edge, it was like branches that were weaved together, and then the actual like bedding itself was the pine needles and like moss. We had a lot of I'm blanking on trees. Manzanita. It's really thick, really fibrous stuff that is super sturdy. You would find that out in places used to weave that wasn't anywhere near a manzanita bush.
So did it look like it was ripped off the tree, or did you notice at the time?
I couldn't tell at the time. By the time I found it, it was older. The pine needles were all brown. It had been there for a hot minute. Um, but it was still that was the craziest thing too. Is it was old, but it was still so sturdy. Like it didn't look like wind had blown it over there. Everything looked intentional, if that makes sense.
Oh, do you think it was made by Bigfoot, possibly?
Yeah, there's no way a bear or anything could have put that stuff together, for sure. Um, that was another theory. People were like, "Well, homeless people probably did it," and I was like, "That's a lot of work for a homeless guy in the middle of the woods." Like, it didn't make sense. A lot of and what do they say? When you eliminate all the rational possibilities, the only thing left is the impossible. And I've thought about it for years. I'm 34 now, so 22, 23 years I've thought about it. And thinking back there's no way something without human-like hands with thumbs could have built something like that.
Right. Did going back to some of the old timers, did they go into any kind of detail about Bigfoot, or these have been spotted, these places, or what?
Not really. They would talk about Bigfoot, and everybody would have their stories. They'd be like, "Oh, I was driving the Crummy, which is the old truck, up the logging road, and something ran in front of it, or I saw it pass behind me." All of them had stories, and it was so cool, especially as a young man, to sit and listen to them, like on our lunch break, just listen to them talk about it. Some claimed to have fur. They never brought it. I never saw it, but they were like, "Oh yeah, I had fur caught in a tree, and I took it home, and I have it." And none of them ever had the proof to bring in. They never actually brought it to it, but yeah, a lot of them had some really, really cool stories. My dad included. My dad said he found a whole track. He was cutting a road and he found a muddy patch. And he said it was the breadth of the steps. He said he would have to do almost like a long jump between them.
So he found impressions or tracks. Wow. I've mentioned this several times. You talk about the nest you find or the structures, and then your dad finding a trackway. Um, it you just add all these pieces together of a puzzle, and then what does it make? What do you come up with?
Yeah, it really does. It's people say, "Oh, there's no research, there's no proof." It's like, what do you need to prove something? You need evidence, right? And when you have so many different pieces of evidence from different people who you actually trust and are in the same areas, it builds a roadmap. It literally does, from idea to proof to realization.
Exactly. And I believe, I'm not sure if you were logging in Humboldt County, but I know Humboldt County believe, has the most sightings in the state of California.
Yeah, I tell people all the time, there's two places that I truly believe if you're going to find a Yeti or a Sasquatch, a Bigfoot, there's two places on Earth. It's going to be the Arctic tundra where nothing out there exists, or it's going to be the Redwoods because it is so thick and dark and heavy. Like I was saying, when you walk between two trees, everything just disappears. It really feels like you end up on like the bottom of the ocean. It's just so massive. You can't see very far at all. You can't, the size of the trees and the thickness between them, because that's what a lot of people think. People think the big trees, there's going to be huge spaces between them. They really aren't. They really grow really close together. And where they're not growing, you have thick ferns. And like, there's a reason they did like, shots for Jurassic Park up there. You have ancient stuff there that looks like a completely different world. So I 100%, if someone's going to find Bigfoot eventually, I believe it's going to be in those woods. It's not going to be easy, but I do believe that's where it's going to be.
Correct. You're absolutely right. That it's just so, like I said earlier, and you said as well, the trees are just so massive, and everything else around it, even the ferns that grow, are just huge. It would be so easy for something to hide and flourish in there as well. There's tons of coverage. There's tons of food in that area, right?
Oh no, yeah, you can find huge. One of my favorite things as a kid is we'd go over to the coast and you'll find like acres of blackberry bushes, raspberry bushes, and you just pluck them right out, and they're huge, like half dollar size, like massive. And on top of predation, like if there's so many different prey animals in there. And then to your point about the large trees, they actually have a whole exhibit that's called the drive-through tree. It's literally a living redwood that they have cut a hole big enough for people to drive cars through. And so it's really not far-fetched to think about a whole family building a house within a tree and being able to disguise it, and you wouldn't even know. You would walk right by it and have no clue.
Going back to the where the structures were that you found, to rule out a homeless person or someone just camping or hiking, tell the listeners, you know, how remote the area was that that you guys were logging in.
Oh yeah. So most people would camp or not camp. They would stay in town, and everybody would pile into what's called a crummy. A crummy is like an old big Chevy, whatever, and you would drive 2 3 hours just to get to your logging site. And it was a single road, which was usually built by my dad, using a skidder and a cat. So it wasn't even like a public area. It wasn't like there were trails, because you can't fall trees and stuff across active trails. There's too much risk. So when you send out scouters and forestry, they go out and they scout the area first, make sure there's no humans in the area, there's no structures, there's no possibility that when you're falling these huge trees, you're going to kill someone, because obviously you kill someone, your whole logging operation's getting shut down. So even after we had the road built, it would still take us 2 3 hours into these woods. And yeah, you wouldn't come across another living soul. It was just the people that were working the site, and that was it.
And that goes back to one of the pieces of the puzzle that, you put that together, something with the hand, something living in this area, nobody that's just going to randomly show up and build a nest structure.
Yeah, 100%. Like unless they jumped out of an airplane and landed in those woods and built it, some DB Cooper stuff. There's no way. There's just no way.
Let me ask you this, Corey. What do you think they are? What do you think the structures were
Oh,
and used for?
I 100% believe they were nests because the areas that you would find them was always near a river. It was always near some kind of vegetation that was edible, whether it was mushroom patches, which you would find a lot in California. It's so moist out there. It's easy to grow mushrooms, berry patches. It was always around resources that would logically make sense.
Right. That's typically when you hear of the nest or the structures, they're usually somewhere where it almost seems like you can escape or they can escape easily. Maybe close to water, like you had mentioned, and possible food sources as well. So,
Yeah, 100%.
yeah, yeah, totally,
Because it was like a
totally
place that,
makes
like,
sense.
if I was gonna build, like, in a survival situation, it's where I would have built some kind of lean-to or a place to bed down to wait
Right,
for, a place to stay for a good minute.
right. I'm going to play this particular piece of footage, and you tell me what you think about this. See if I can pull it up. All right, here we go.
Oh, I know that footage well.
Right there. That's so interesting to me. Yeah, that piece of footage is it's pretty incredible. There's been some skepticism about it lately. I had heard there's a gentleman that is making a documentary where he says he has the true story, which is that it was embellished, it was planned, and all of this. But tell me your opinion of that particular footage.
Yeah, unless they planned it with the Bigfoot, I don't think it was planned. Because again, that's right up there, and those you look at the surrounding area, that's pretty much idyllic of where you would find the nests. Not far from a riverbank like that, right up against those woods. Um, and I actually saw something. I have to look it up. I might send it to you. Someone used AI to analyze the way it walked, and it built a bone structure around what the body would have to look like, and it was so perfect based off of what people have theorized for so long. It was like, you don't put that kind of data into AI. You just show it to them and go, "What do you think?" And for it to come up with the same conjectures and precise measurements is just wild.
To me, it looks totally natural.
Yeah, I've so I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3". I've worn a lot of costumes for events and stuff. It's not easy to walk in and make look normal. Even as a big guy where it fits pretty naturally, to get the legs to move right and the costume to move and everything, it would take a modern film crew style makeup effects to be able to pull that off. And back when that was filmed, that wasn't a thing to that level. I mean, look at the old King Kong movies. If it wasn't claymation, it was someone in a suit. You were like, yeah, that's someone in a suit, and that was high end for the time. Like, I mean, look at even Power Rangers, Godzilla. Like, a man in a suit does not move like an animal. It doesn't move naturally. It is going to be blocky. It's gonna be stiff. It's not gonna have that natural flow to the hips and be able to turn the body without causing some kind of crazy wrinkling in the side. Be able to turn, look, and turn back without breaking stride. Dude, that's so hard to do. It would take a professional actor and a lot of practice and a really good film crew, and the film would
Yes.
be a lot clearer.
Yes, absolutely. It's just like I said, it's too natural. You said the same thing. The movements look fluid to me. The gait does not look like a human gait to me at
Nope.
all. They have talked. There's experts that have talked about how the trail leg comes up and so forth. But you can also, if you really do a deep dive into that particular piece of footage, you can see some muscle coming through
Yeah,
in
you
the
can
leg
see the
area.
rippling, like the natural way a muscle flexes as you walk, engaging the hamstrings to the quad to the calf. All of it is normal, and you wouldn't see that through a suit. Because again, you have a layer. You're going to have clothing underneath it to keep yourself from getting chafed. You're going to have your latex layer, and then on top of that, you're going to have your fur layer. They're quite thick. Like, if you've ever worn an old monkey suit, because I've worn them, for Bigfoot things. It's heavy and it is thick, and it is hard to move in without any kind of without the ability to look natural.
For sure. 100% agree with you. And for people that don't know, that's in Northern California where that was filmed in
Yep.
1967. And it's to me, one of the best, one of the best pieces of footage that there is.
And it fits with a lot of stories because a lot of people brush things off as, oh, it's just a black bear, which we have a lot of. We have a lot of black bears up there. And if you look, if that got down and condensed itself to try to hide, it could make you easily think that was a black bear. If it curled up and went into the tall grass and made some like growling noises, you would think it's a black bear and you're not going to get close enough to it. Or if that just walks by a tree, yeah, that was just a black bear. And the logical part of your brain is going to go, nope, it was a black bear. That's what I saw. It's good. And if you look at the sheen and the way that fur moves, it is almost identical to a black bear's fur, except obviously bipedal and obviously more humanoid. But yeah, that could easily be mistaken if it's especially like through the redwoods and stuff, just moving real quick. Your brain's going to go, nope, that was just a bear. It's all good, just a bear.
Very, very interesting piece of footage. Corey, what would you tell a skeptic?
Go out and look. Go listen. It's easy to sit online and be like, I went camping once and I've never heard anything. You got to go where there is no one. Like I said, I never heard anything near a camp or near a resort or near a town. Like you see in a lot of the shows, they're like, we're like a mile outside. And I'm like, no, you're not going to find something a mile outside of a town. You got to go deep. You got to go into those redwoods. You got to go into the Sierra Nevadas. And you got to really put the effort in. You have to hike and plan on staying a week, 2 weeks to be able to get where you need to be. And forget everything you hear. Don't listen for tree knocks. Don't try to set up something. The more you try to initiate something, the less likely you're going to get a response. These creatures have been around forever. They understand. They know. If you just go and listen, you're more likely to catch something. You're not going to catch them, but you might catch a sound. You might find a nest. You might find a tree structure. But you have to let yourself open your mind in a way that you're not expecting. Don't go in as a skeptic. Don't go in as a believer. Just go in as a normal person and just go enjoy nature and see what kind of crazy stuff you'll find.
Yes, a lot of mystery still out there. Let me ask you this: Did your dad believe that the creature existed?
Oh yeah, which is funny too, because my dad was a hardcore skeptic. So my dad grew up rough. He was in gangs and stuff. He didn't believe, you know, he don't believe in aliens. He don't believe in nothing. But the one thing he believes in is Bigfoot, which always kind of weirded me out. I was like, why? And he goes, because I've seen things. He was always one of those you have to see to believe. And he had seen enough that even in his extremely skeptic mind, it was real.
Really interesting. You had mentioned that you heard some noises or some sounds uh, that you could not explain in Northern California, correct?
Yep.
Could you tell us what you think they might be or what they sounded like?
Yeah, I'm not going to do an impression because but so again, I grew up in the woods. I know what a bear sounds like. I know what a mountain lion sounds like. I know foxes. I know pretty much anything that's out there, every call, every bugle I've heard. But there were some, it sounded like a really deep throated howler monkey almost. And the only reason I can remember it because I went to a zoo down in San Francisco when I was younger. When I was probably like 15, 16. And we went by the monkeys and I heard these howler monkeys and it made the hair rise up. And I was like, wait, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like I had heard something like that before. Although it was way much higher pitch because they're smaller. But I can remember getting goosebumps and just like freezing and going, what is that? And my friend going, it's just the monkeys. And I was like, oh, okay. But it triggered that memory of I had heard something like that before. That started to like low and then it would get high and then it would come back down to like a deep pitch that would go a little longer. So and yeah, that's not anything, no bird or anything I had ever heard growing up. That was the only, and I only ever heard it when I was in the deep, deep woods, when I was out logging, when I was out hiking. stuff like that was the only time you would hear that kind of stuff.
At the time, did you know what it might have been, or did you just kind of write it off as, I'm not sure what this is?
Pretty much, yeah. I was just like, I think part of me didn't want to know. It was like, that's new, that's scary. I'm just gonna ignore that and pretend like I didn't hear that terrifying noise that I'd never heard. Um, yeah. So at the time, yeah, I didn't even try to correlate it. I was like, that's freaky. I don't know what it is. I'm good.
Yeah, I think that happens quite a bit with people not knowing something, or they don't want to think that there's something out there that they're not sure of,
Yeah,
and they just kind of put that to the back of their mind, or just forget about it. But that is so neat to me that when you heard that at a zoo, immediately it triggered that memory.
yeah, like just right up the spine, just tingles. Like, holy crap, that's the sound I heard. It was real, but you know, yeah, it freaked me out pretty good. And then we went and I just watched the monkeys moving and stuff, and I was like, that's so crazy.
How far in the distance do you think the vocalizations were that you heard?
Probably miles, miles and miles. But they were loud enough that, like, again, you would feel it almost, like, especially when it got to like that deeper notes. But you could tell it had traveled a while. It was almost like a wolf. Like, if you've ever heard a wolf howl, you can tell if they're howling close or if they're doing it from a mountain over. Just the way it kind of loses the resonance as it comes. So that's how I knew it wasn't close enough to freak out, but it was close enough for me to hear. But it could have been miles.
Something powerful.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Well, Corey, at the end of each episode, I do a rapid fire Q&A where I'll ask 3 questions, and it's the first thing that you can think of. It's just real casual.
Sounds good.
All right, here we go. Number 1, favorite Bigfoot TV show, past or present?
Probably Bigfoot expedition.
Okay. The one that we had talked about in the same
Yep.
cast that was in Estes Park.
It's the most realistic one I've ever watched where they actually like do the scientific research and it's not them using cute little camera angles and it's just real. They either find stuff or they don't.
Right. Yeah, that's the technology aspect of it has come a long way since maybe even Finding Bigfoot
Oh yeah.
or some of the other shows, in the early 2000s. So, number 2, name one thing on your bucket list.
I want to go to Japan. My wife served in the Navy. She's been all over the world and Japan has always been one of those places. Go check out. Because again, I like the old cool stuff. I want to go see the old temples and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. Number 3, favorite fast food chain.
In and out. Just because I'm
In
a
and Out.
Cali boy.
In and Out Burger. Yeah. We don't have them around here.
They just started building them in Colorado like a couple years ago, and I'm stoked. I'm so happy. They're not even that great. Like I won't I won't even say they're that good. I think it's a nostalgia thing at this point. I go there to eat and it feels like home.
Right. Because you grew up
Yeah,
around them.
exactly. Like there's a lot better burger joints out there. Way better. Sorry, In and Out. But but yeah, it's that nostalgia. That or probably Black Bear Diner if I had to name my favorite restaurant. Because again, Black Bear Diner started in Shasta, California. My parents were at the grand opening of the very first one.
That's pretty neat. Well, Corey, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to come on the show. I've enjoyed talking with you about your encounters and some of the stories you have.
Absolutely. It was awesome coming on. Thanks for the patience with the schedule. I do appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem at all. I've truly enjoyed it. And if something else comes up, we'll have to do a part 2.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Bring me on anytime. If you have another guest that's had similar experiences, I'd like to get their opinion on things too.
Yeah, for sure. And for the listeners, if you've had an encounter or something strange or unexplained, email us at the cryptidcrewpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and God bless.